Hello, my friends. So I just wanted to make a quick follow-up video to my video on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and just add a few things, clarify a few things, and just get a few more ideas out there, because I think this is a pretty big event, and it's worth making a quick follow-up video to get these ideas out. So the first is very brief, which is that those of you who have been saying that this should have never gone to trial, I completely agree with you. There were videos available from the very get-go that were live streamed during the event itself that I think showed unequivocally that he was defending himself. So yeah, I agree this should have never gone to trial, and it's a damn shame that it did. The second thing is, I got a couple comments from people saying that my take on the matter was demoralizing. And what I responded with was, you know, if trying to get into the mind of the elites, if trying to understand how they could twist a situation like this to their advantage is demoralizing to you, then your spirit is already too fragile to fight this fight. And I stand by that. I mean, we have to be able to apprehend and to anticipate how the elites will take events, even events that we think are positive for us. We have to be able to understand how they're going to use it to their advantage. And trying to understand their strategy and their agenda as a whole is something that I think is really important. So I wasn't making it to demoralize people. I was just trying to understand from the elite's perspective how this could be used to their advantage. Now, the third point that I'd like to make is, I think the most important point that I'm going to make in this video, which it occurred to me that I didn't get into this when I was discussing the video with my father. He basically asked the question, if the not guilty verdict is going to work in favor of the elites, then would I have preferred a guilty verdict? Do I think that Kyle Rittenhouse should have been held guilty, and would that have somehow been better for us? Because just to briefly recap, I argued in my previous video that the not guilty verdict is going to play into the hand of the elites by reinforcing this dialectic, this conflict between the BLM, so-called oppressed minorities side, the Marxist leftist side, and the white patriotic conservative side. And the not guilty verdict is necessary to bolster, to reinforce the confidence of the white conservative patriotic side in order to further the conflict, and that the elites thrive on this kind of conflict, that they use this kind of conflict specifically to advance their agenda. And without the conflict, their agenda doesn't advance as well, that they need to demonize the whites and to create the perception of the oppressed lefty Marxist non-white side. And so that this continued dialectic requires that the conservative whites side gets some victories, that we're not completely, that we're not completely shut down and discouraged from showing up to these kinds of events, and that in giving us this kind of confidence to show up to these kind of events, and believing that we're going to be able to defend ourselves and defend our cities from the BLM Marxist mob, that at some point in the future, full-on skirmishes that could result in more deaths will occur, and that this plays right into their end game. So I told him no. I obviously think that the not guilty verdict was preferable, and I, once again, to reiterate, think that it's a victory for self-defense, and I'm glad that he was found not guilty. But ultimately, I think that this dialectic, this conflict between the patriotic whites and the Marxist non-whites and their traitorous allies, or traitorous fellow whites and white allies, is the type of manufactured conflict that will never benefit us in the long run. And there's no benefit to us in the long run to show up to BLM riots and mobs and to fight against them in particular. And, you know, there may be some moments when it's necessary to occur, but in the long run, the BLM, Antifa, Marxist left is not our true enemy. And I compared this to Lord of the Rings, because I think it's a good analogy. In Lord of the Rings, the leaders of the West, the leaders of the free folk, they realized that what they really had to do was destroy the ring. They didn't spend all their time fighting against the orcs. They spent their time targeting the true hand behind the evil. And they wanted to destroy the ring and Sauron itself. And that might sound cringy, I guess, to you. Anytime people make analogies to fantasy works, it borders, you know, there's a risk of sounding cringy, but the fact is that this is something we really need to keep in mind. Our real enemies are not these golems, these creations, these mindless sort of zombie hordes that the elites have created, namely Antifa, BLM, the Marxist left. Those aren't our real enemies. Our real enemies are the oligarchs themselves. And, you know, I'm not going to advocate any kind of potentially illegal activity, of course. But moving forward, I think we only have two real options in this fight. The first is what I really try to push for, which is removing our dependence from these people, separating ourselves from their system as a whole, and becoming independent from them. You know, what that entails is getting as off-grid as you possibly can, building communities with our fellow like-minded people as much as we can, and just removing ourselves from the social, economic, and political control of this elite ruling class. That's one way to fight them. The other way to fight them is not to show up to BLM, Antifa mob activity and to fight those people, but to identify the real enemies and fight against them, which are these oligarchs, the people at the very top. It's that would be the ultimate head of the Hydra that we'd have to chop off, hypothetically speaking. And once again, I don't advocate any illegal activity. But if we were to actually have an effective fight against the evil in the world, we would want to destroy Sauron himself and not just fight against endless hordes of orcs. That's all I have to say for today. Thank you for watching.